All right, welcome. Today we're diving into something that honestly feels a bit like magic, turning a simple Dryo diagram into a fully functional, interactive website. And we're going to do it with an incredible tool called Nasdanika. Let's break down exactly how you can take your static drawings and make them come alive. Seriously, just let that sink in for a moment. Most of the time, our diagrams are just pictures, right? They're helpful, for sure, but they're static, they get outdated, they live in a separate folder somewhere, and they don't actually do anything. But what if they could be the living, breathing blueprint for a real website? That's the game-changing idea we're digging into today. So here's our game plan. First, we'll cover the big idea behind it all. Then I'll show you the super fast template to get you up and running in minutes. We'll customize the look and feel, then get into the really fun part, bringing your diagram to life with actual content. After that, we'll see how to link multiple diagrams together, and finally, we'll peek into the future to see what else is possible. So, how in the world does this actually work? Well, the best way to think about it is like a really smart assembly line. Nasdanika takes your Dryo file, but instead of just seeing a picture, it reads the data underneath, the shapes, the text, the connections you've made. It then uses all that information as a blueprint to automatically construct a complete, navigable website. All of a sudden, every box and arrow you draw has a purpose. And you know what the best part is? You don't have to start from zero. There's a GitHub template all set up and ready to go. It's got all the configuration, all the automation, everything you need. You're literally one click away from having a new project primed and ready to become your website.
And getting that first site live is incredibly fast. We're talking just 3 simple steps. First, you use that template to create your own repository. Second, you just pop into the settings, go to GitHub Pages, and tell it to use GitHub Actions as its source. And third, you manually run the Generate HTML site action just one time to kick things off. That is it. In just a couple of minutes, you'll have a live URL with a starter website.
Okay, so you've got a live site, which is awesome, but you probably want to make it look like, well, your site. Let's talk about customization. What's so great here is that you don't need to be a web developer. The entire look and feel is controlled by a couple of simple text files. You'll really only be looking at 2 main files. The first is pagetemplate.yml. This one is all about the visual style. You want to change the entire color scheme. It's literally one line of code. The second file is rootaction.yml. This one manages the site structure, things like the main title, that little icon in your browser tab, and the links in the footer. It's all plain text and super easy to edit. And now for the main event. How do we add our own content? This is the core of the whole workflow, and it happens right inside the Draw.io editor you already know and love. From now on, you're not just drawing shapes, you're actually building the content structure of your website using custom properties. The magic really begins with a property called documentation. You can add this to any element in your diagram, like, for example, this box for Alice. Then you just start writing your content using Markdown right inside that property's value. When the site gets generated, Nasdanika sees that property and, bam, it automatically creates a dedicated web page just for Alice, filled with all your content. Of course, you're probably thinking that stuffing pages and pages of text into a tiny property field sounds messy. And you'd be right. That's why there's a better way for longer content, the docref property. This lets you just link to an external Markdown file instead. So your diagram stays clean, but you can still have a super rich, content-heavy website. And this goes way beyond just page content. You get an incredible amount of control. You can set a custom ID to create clean, readable URLs. If an element's label is really long, you can use a title property to give it a shorter name for the navigation menu. You can even assign an icon or define an element's role to control exactly how and where it appears. And all of this is managed right from the properties of your diagram shapes.
Now, here is a pro tip, a really important watch out for this kind of thing. If a shape in your diagram doesn't have a label on it or a specific title property, a page will not be created for it. This is a super common way to get broken links if you're not paying attention, so just make sure your important elements are always properly named.
So far, we've kind of been acting like our whole website comes from just one diagram. But let's be real, most systems are way too complex for a single canvas, right? Well, this is where Nasdanika really starts to shine. You can link multiple diagrams together to build a massive, comprehensive website that covers your entire project. The key to this is a special kind of link format. Now, the syntax might look a little crazy at first, but the idea is actually very simple. It lets you create a link from an element in one diagram to a specific element in a completely different diagram. This is the glue that lets you weave all your separate files into a single cohesive web of information. And this shows you exactly what happens. On the left, we've got two separate files, but because we've linked them together, just look at the website navigation on the right. It's a single, unified hierarchy. Wendy, who only exists in that Bob Details file, appears perfectly nested under Bob in the final sites menu. It all just works, seamlessly. Look, generating a documentation site this easily is an amazing capability, but it's really just the beginning. The fundamental idea here, the big shift in thinking, is that your diagram is no longer just a picture. It's structured data, and once you have data, you can do so much more with it. I mean, think bigger. Imagine executable diagrams, where clicking an element actually triggers a piece of code. Or semantic mapping, where you can automatically transform your informal drawing into a strict, formal data model. You could even use filters to change how a diagram looks on the fly. Imagine a server element on your website that automatically turns red the second its monitoring system reports an outage. So that's the big takeaway. When you stop looking at your diagrams as just static pictures and you start treating them as structured, machine-readable data, a whole universe of possibilities opens up. The question isn't just about building a documentation site anymore. It's about, what are you going to build with this powerful new way of thinking?